Alright, and welcome to my first review of the first magazine that I'm going to review. And I'm only reviewing this in no particular order. It's just the first one that I found on top of in my collection. But this is a review for the Sega Saturn magazine, produced by SoftBank. It was released, as you can see, in September of 1997. And the featured story on the cover is none other than the famous treasure game Silhouette Mirage. And there are a lot of other things that are featured in this magazine, so let's get right into it. The cover is a beautiful, what do you call these things? Beautiful pictures of Silhouette Mirage. The back is of a popular singer, Moritaka Chisato, and she had a Sega Saturn game too. It was crazy. Anyways, let's get right into it. It cost 290 yen when it first came out. Well, when it only came out. And these magazines, well, I think you're also going to love all of the advertisements in this. This has such cool full page, well, double page advertisements of all of these really cool games. In fact, I think I'm going to have to split this video into two sections because there's so many things that you're going to need to digest, and this is just one issue, but there are a lot. I'd like to go back and see some notable stories, but I think there's going to be so many that I don't know how we're going to share this information. But as you can see, this was a video game show in 1997. And look at all of these cool things. And there's Crash crashing the Sega booth. It comes with all of these little articles. Talks about goods, news. And remember, back then there was no internet. This is pretty much how you got the news. This is the top 15 games in Japan. They go to all of these shops, and I think that they had a computer database where they'd scan the code and that went into a server, and this is how they tabulated the #1 games this week. This magazine came out weekly, and these top ratings changed weekly just because well, you needed to have fresh information for every issue. We can see Virus, the #1 game. Kind of surprising, but you know, the taste of Japanese gamers back then was much different than gamers in other countries or even Japanese gamers at the time. These were the top arcade games at the time. You can see Virtua Fighter 3 was the #1 game in these arcades, which have gone to extinction in other countries, but it's where you would put in 100 yen and you got to play others on arcade machines. And fighters were always very popular because you got to play other people, just like how now on your iPad or whatnot, people tend to prefer interactive games. As you can see, almost all of these games were fighter games. I don't want to read all of them just because my Japanese isn't the best, but you can see Virtua Fighter, Tekken, Virtua Striker 2. I think that was a soccer game. These were the top games that people wanted to get, so it's the top hopeful new soft. Sometimes over here you may see games that were never released, but I don't have time to go into that right now. For example, Biohazard 2. I'm not sure if that was released on Sega Saturn. If I'm not mistaken, only Biohazard 1 was ever released on the Sega Saturn. So it's cool to see that they were planning it. Where is it? They were planning it, and it just never came out. These are more charts. More charts, more reviews. We have Sakura Wars 2, which did come out, and it tells you about how to play it. Their live interactive picture system, which if you've played the game, you know how it works. You've got to forget what you got to do, but you've got to choose these things in time, and you have a time limit to choose different options. This is the suit that they wore to battle. This is Super Robot Wars, which was very cool. You've got to see the introduction screen to this because it combined all of these robots from different, live robot shows as well as cartoon shows, and they put them all into one game. It was a strategy game where you had to attack and defend in turns. This is Black Matrix. Looking at Black Matrix, you might think that this was, I think this came out before Blizzard's Diablo, but it had this sort of 2.5D effect where you had to attack people. This one, I'm not too familiar with this, but it says that it's friends, and like a lot of Japanese games, they love these pretty anime girls, is what I'll call them. This was a role-playing game. Chaos Seed, role-playing game. There were a lot of role-playing games. Even though Saturn was more known for other types of games, there were a whole bunch of role-playing games that were released on PlayStation as well as Sega Saturn at the same time. Usually they were released on both of the platforms. Well, not usually, but there were very many. These are just overviews of these games. More overview of these games. These soccer games were very popular. Well, these soccer and sports, creating your own team and tournaments were very popular at the time. Called Sep, a sort of card game. Soul Hackers, which many of you may be familiar with. What is it called? But they have these games. Persona? I don't know, they have all these games on DS, Nintendo DS already, even in the US. So this is the one that kind of started it all. There was, I think, one more before this. And the series continues to live on 20 years later. You can see all of these cool things. Another RPG. Personally, I'm not too familiar with this game. It says that it's an old historical simulator. This is a pretty rare looking game. I honestly haven't really seen it before. This is an interview with the musical artist for the game Virus. I guess appropriate at that time since it was the #1 game during the week that this came out. They actually they were able to get a interview with the musician. This is a nice double page ad of Falcom Classics, which included these 3 games which first appeared on the PC Engine. So this was a pretty popular collection. It was nostalgic to get this collection 20 years ago for games that were 5 years old at that time. But people, it's pretty cool. You got all of them in one collection. Here we have really cool word processor set for the Sega Saturn. You could also connect your digital camera to your Sega Saturn. Very, very interesting and cool. You could make all of these postcards. It was in 1997, such a wonderful time. These are great letters and art that fans sent into the magazine. Very nice. This is the list of every game that was ever released by for the Saturn. Gives you the cost, how many units it sold, release date, title, up until this, all the games released up until that time. So in the later issues, this is actually bigger. Here is a wonderful 2-page spread advertisement for Silhouette Mirage. I don't really remember that game. Top Skater. And this gives you some strategy hints. This is Sokyu Gurentai. This is actually a novel. If you'd like to read this, it gives you, you know, stories about the fighter pilots and what they're going through. There's dialogue, backstory. So that's cool too. Some of them, if anyone ever translated, it might be the first time these things have ever been read in 20 years. And we're already on page 120. Here's a nice double page ad of Blue Breaker. And I think I'll continue part 2 of this video at another time. That way you'll have time to watch it in smaller snippets rather than having to watch me go through a magazine in 30 minutes. So until then, take care, and I'll see you guys next time.